There's so many videos of beef Wellington out there, but which is going to be the right one for you? Well, let me help you. I'm going to do a classic version of the beef Wellington. Then I'm going to do a version with a little bit more technique, a bit harder, but is the results going to be worth it? We don't know. But stick around, and later I'm going to show you the Auntie Liz quick hack version of doing a beef Wellington at home. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's dive in. So a little backstory on how we got here. So beef Wellington, pay attention class. Who? Well, beef Wellington, it's actually hard to trace where it originated, but many say it came from 1815, around the Battle of Waterloo, where Arthur Wellesley was named the Duke of Wellington after winning that battle. What is it? It's essentially meat wrapped around in pastry. Now, the English were well known for our Cornish pastries, and this is a fine, really indulgent example of it. Many say that it was inspired by the filet de beef en croûte, where beef is wrapped in pastry. It is many layers with mushrooms or pancakes, ham. It's absolutely delicious. Why? Why is it so popular? Beef Wellington is one of those ultimate indulgent meals because it requires a lot of steps and effort. You can go as fancy as you want. We've seen so many videos of using foie gras, Wagyu Chateaubriand. It can go on and on. It can get crazy and crazy expensive. A lot of steps to this, but the results are fantastic. How do we make it? Well, let me show you. So you're going to want to get the center cut of a fillet. So if you're lucky enough and have a whole Chateaubriand, the fillet actually tapers off towards the end where it gets a little bit smaller. You want to get the center cut. So this means you want that fillet to be even. Otherwise, your Wellington's going to be a little bit lopsided. Now they're completely seared all over. So after we've seared them, we're going to baste it liberally in mustard. This is going to act like a glue to the mushroom duxelle. If you don't like mustard, don't be put off by this. You can omit it. English mustard is a lot stronger than the Dijon mustard, which has got a bit more wine and vinegar in it, but it just gives a nice heat and a bit of seasoning to the meat. Because, you know, filet is quite bland. It doesn't have much fat or flavor other than a really lovely texture. I'm gonna put it straight into the fridge while we make our pancakes. Because I'm gonna make a herb pancake, we're gonna bring a pan of water to a boil, salt it, don't forget to salt it. And the herbs we're going to use are some parsley, some chives, and some freshly washed spinach. Scoop it out into some ice water. You want to squeeze out as much water as possible before cutting it up and putting it into a blender. Now you're gonna blend it up with some egg and milk into a fine, smooth mixture before you add it into a bowl with some flour to make a basic pancake mixture. Now it's time to make the duxelle. Not duxelle, duxelle. It's the French technique of cooking minced mushroom. We're going to sweat off the shallots and garlic first. You're not coloring the shallots and garlic too much. We just want to sweat it to take out the liquid. Now we sweat them for a couple of minutes, in goes the mushroom. And the point with this duxelles, we want to cook all that mushroom out and to get all that moisture out as much as possible. So this is why I'm using a really nice wide base pan. With mushroom duxelle, you need to make sure that you season it really well with lots of salt and pepper. But the extra sort of bougie trick is, of course, flambeing it with a bit of cognac and brandy. Everyone loves turning up the heat in the kitchen, right? Now, this is where I love, you can see the evolution of the beef Wellington. So on the classic version, we're going to layer that duxelle over the herb crepe. But on the right-hand side, I'm showing you the newest technique where we're going to layer the prosciutto over some phyllo pastry. Now this phyllo pastry is basically really fine puff pastry. So this is just some beef bone marrow I'm going to crumble on top of my duxelle. So as the beef is and everything's heating up, it's just going to melt and help render that fat and that lovely flavour over the beef, keeping it nice and moist, and also you get these little nuggets of bone marrow. This is where I love, you can see the evolution of the beef Wellington. So on the classic version, we're going to layer that duxelle over the herb crepe. But on the right hand side, I'm showing you the newest technique where we're going to layer the prosciutto over some phyllo pastry. Now this phyllo pastry is basically really fine pastry. Now the main thing about beef Wellington is rolling it up, and it is notoriously difficult. Like when you wrap it up with the herb pancakes, it can be really fiddly. So I use these layers of cling film to help secure and maintain that shape. But with the phyllo puff pastry, it was just so simple. I mean, look how easy that is on the video. Just trim the sides off, and then I use the cling film again just to hold that shape while I chill it. How easy was that? Both of them, you're going to wrap it up into a ballantine shape, and then we're going to let it chill for at least 30 minutes just while we get the puff pastry ready. Simple. Now there's a couple of ways we can layer the puff pastry for the beef Wellington. I'm going to use some ready-made puff pastry here, but I mean, if you completely want to throw the boat out, you can make your own puff pastry, but I mean, hats off to you. You can wrap the beef Wellington in 2 sheets of puff pastry, or on the right-hand side, I did it in 1 entire roll. I mean, it was a little tricky, but it's worth it. You get this real nice, even layer. Now to really push the boat out, I'm also going to create a lattice pattern of this puff pastry using a lattice cutter. It's linked in the description. And you want to give it a little bit of pressure so that you get a nice even score on that puff pastry. And this is just going to enhance the presentation, add an extra layer of crispiness, and everyone at the dining table is just going to think you are completely baller for doing this extra work for you. So stick around later to see how it tastes. One thing to note with the lattice is if it's starting to get a little bit hard to manage, definitely just put it back in the fridge just to harden up a little, because puff pastry is made out of so many layers of butter, and butter, when it starts to come to room temperature, is really hard to manage. So don't be afraid just to put it back in the fridge and give it a little bit extra time. And then I've decorated my version with some extra sprigs of thyme because I had the extra time. Sorry. So these Wellingtons look absolutely fantastic. They are ready for the oven. They have, so we've got here the classic version with crepe pancake, duxelle, and this one's a little bit more chefy YouTuber one. You've got the duxelle, prosciutto, the phyllo pastry. I'm really excited to see how this one turns out. But you know what, sometimes, I mean, look at the size of these. They're massive, right? And I don't say that often, but you just want to feed maybe 1 or 2 people. You've got Valentine's around the corner, and you don't want to have the means or time to prep all of these different bits and bobs, and you just want to use a handful of ingredients. Well, I've got the solution. Pay attention. This is going to be the Auntie Liz at-home version. Let's go. You're going to need 5 ingredients. We've got some beef fillet. This one's an absolutely gorgeous one I got from the market. Cabbage. This is Savoy cabbage. Ready-made puff pastry. Now this is your best friend. Optional. You can use prosciutto, parmesan, pork rillette. I highly recommend it. This is going to substitute the duxelle, so no chopping or mincing all those mushrooms up. We're going to use this pork rillette. You could also use pate. I'm going to cut it down to a portion size. 200 to 250 is what you normally get in the supermarket, but the butchers. That is really still a good size for a Wellington. And if you haven't noticed, I've still got this all tied up. This is going to help it when we're searing to help hold that shape. And then for the cabbage, I've got some water boiling because I'm going to blanch this cabbage. With Savoy, it's got a very hard stem in the middle. We're going to just cut that out. And the best thing about cabbage is it doesn't hold a lot of moisture once we blanch it and squeeze out all that water. It's much better than saying using spinach, which has a lot of water content. So we've got a lovely crust and sear all over that beef fillet, but it's completely raw, rare on the inside. We're not going to worry about that because we've still got another cooking step to go. Put those into the fridge to let them cool down and get the next part ready. We're not doing mushroom duxelle. I'm going to use pork rillette. This is like pulled pork pate cooked with pork fat. It's just a really much faster way of doing this beef Wellington. We're just going to take just under a tablespoon. And actually this helps when you get your hands a little bit wet, because the fat then doesn't stick to your hands. We're just gonna make like a little patty, and we're just going to encase the beef fillet. And what that's going to do is create, like the mushroom duxelle, creates a little barrier, a little juicy, moist barrier to protect that beef fillet when it's cooking in the oven. Okay, so what we're gonna end up is with this little ball completely enveloped in that pork rillette. Then we're gonna take our cabbage and just lay it down, overlapping. And we're going to want to cover it all over. Again, we're just creating this layer, just like the pancakes, pretty well covered with that cabbage. Next step is you're gonna wrap it up to help hold that shape. So instead of having to do a ballotine like these, the other Wellingtons, this one's so much more simple. Just fold a piece of cling film over the ball carefully without losing any of those cabbage. We're just gonna turn it around and twist it and twist it and twist it until we form like a ball shape. So simple. And that is gonna be the shape of the Wellington. So instead of going oblong, we've got a round one. So this is more, technically more like a petivier, but it's still encased in the pastry and it's gonna be absolutely delicious. So we're gonna put it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes to help form that shape even better, and then it's ready to go in the pastry. All right, so we've taken this ball out of the freezer. It's been about 30 minutes and it's firmed up really nicely. It's holding its shape without the cling film. It's ready to wrap up in the puff pastry. Now to speed things along, I got some pre-rolled pastry, but you can only find it in a block. Just roll it out nice and even. We're gonna cut this piece in half and just stretch the pastry over the top. You wanna use the curve of your hand to kind of just tuck it in. So you want to get rid of any air bubbles. Now when you're working with puff pastry, it's always a really nice touch to score the pastry because it adds this like decoration. Otherwise it can just look like a bog standard pie. So I'm just going to use the back of a knife, not the actual knife blade, because that'll just cut through the puff pastry. And if you've got them, you can do some like pastry cutters to cut out little shapes or patterns, which is just like a little bit extra to add to your pie. I mean, the result is the decoration or the result is completely up to you. It's your cooking, your kitchen, your rules. But I mean, I love to decorate the tivier like this. I mean, look how great that looks. There we have it. It's 1, 2, 3 gorgeous looking beef Wellingtons. We don't hold back on this channel, do we? Now, this one has been resting for about 10 minutes and it has gone up 10 degrees. It says here it's at 51 degrees. So you can allow a lot of resting time, but just remember that inside temperature is going to keep going up. It's got a mini oven inside this pastry. Now for the exciting part, the eating. I'm going to start off with the classic. First thoughts, I think I definitely can go a lot thinner on the pancakes because it started to fall apart. So maybe just the weight of the pancakes and the duxelles just really sort of not really held its shape as I wanted it to. And pancakes lovely. I think it's got a real meatiness to it because of the duxelle, and that pancake is really got a nice contrast to it. It's like so soft, like butter. Now for the YouTuber chef version. Now, I love that extra layer of lattice. When I was cutting through it, it was like crunch, and it was sounds amazing. You can know there's definitely lots of texture there, and it's held its shape perfectly. So I think that extra layer of phyllos really helped it out here. This one's a bit saltier. I'm guessing because of the prosciutto, you got that ham in there. It's really adding to the saltiness. But you know what? It's got really lovely flavour. The meat has really sort of absorbed all of that, and it's just given it a really nice seasoning. I actually really like that. And I can see here there's little nuggets of bone marrow cooked through. Wow. And the lattice does add this amazing crunch right at the end. That is absolutely fantastic. Okay, now for my hack, the quick eats. Again, just gonna get a little bit of everything. Considering that was half the amount of time, I think the results are awesome. Can you imagine bringing out on the dining table mini individual Wellingtons? I think that alone will have the wow factor, and it tastes fantastic considering it only used 5 ingredients. I think that is definitely a trick that's going in straight into the winner's book. I think In terms of skill and technicality, the chef version one is fantastic. The umami, the saltiness, the meat, even the lattice on the outside, everything is just shouts wow and flavorful. The classic version is lovely, but did the pancakes really help add anything? If anything, I think it made it have a bit too much moisture into that dish, even though they were quite thin pancakes. And that's it for this video. 3 beef Wellingtons. My goodness, don't say we don't do a lot for you guys. Head over to my website, auntielizcooks.com. I'm going to put the recipes for the classic version of beef Wellington, and head over to my Patreon page if you want that Auntie Liz hat. If you haven't already, please subscribe and give us a like and comment. Which one of the 3 would you choose to cook for a dinner party or for yourself? Let me know, see you in the comments, and I'll see you next week.